Hello and welcome to the Indo Politics, our look back on the last 7 days in Irish and international politics. Tabitha Monaghan is away. I'm Fionnán Sheahan, so I'm filling in for her. But I am joined by Mary Regan, political editor with the Irish Independent. Mary, we thought it was being a dull presidential election, and now it's become a bit more exciting, shall we say. Let's start where we're at now. It hasn't been a great week for Jim Gavin. Talking about Gavin's gaffes, and how has it emerged that basically it would appear that every video that Jim Gavin puts up, he now has to pull 24 hours later.
Yeah, when you're deleting tweets, you're losing in an election campaign. And so far, Jim Gavin has deleted 3 social media posts over a 24-hour period because they were in some ways trying to link in the Defence Forces with his campaign. And my understanding is that after 2 posts went up yesterday, one which sort of claimed to show uniformed members of the Defence Forces clapping for him in a line as he ran across the finishing line, and the other which was a picture of him with the head of the Defence Forces, the Chief of the Staff, Lieutenant General Rossa Mulcahy, with his arm around him. They were both taken down yesterday evening. Now, the Defence Forces had to issue a statement declaring that they are an apolitical organisation.
As we've heard repeatedly from Jim Gavin over the course of this campaign.
Well, Jim Gavin has used his membership of the Defence Forces to argue that he couldn't comment on policy matters over the years. He wasn't involved in any discussions, public statements on a whole range of political movements and issues that happened in this country. And there were very strict rules. There's legislation there about the Defence Forces' involvement in political campaigning. Section 103 of the Defence Act says that anyone who's wearing a uniform or is identified as a member of the Defence Forces cannot comment on political matters or involve themselves in a political campaign or canvass. And it's not just the rules, it's the sort of principle behind it too, that the Defence Forces by its very nature just has to be beyond and above politics, and that is the same situation for pretty much every democratic country in the world, because if they get involved in politics, they expose themselves to being used for the whims of individual politicians, for ideologies, and their job is to protect the citizens, number one. So it would be surprising that Jim Gavin wouldn't know those rules, and yet he went about posting this social media video which has the uniformed members rather clapping. Now, his campaign and the Defence Forces say that they weren't really clapping for him, they were clapping for everyone who was running in the race and at the finish line, and you could make that case. But it was definitely giving the impression that they were supporting his campaign. And there was an intervention from the Defence Forces and those posts were taken down. But he didn't seem to realise that there was another post still there, or another one subsequently posted, in which he was mid-run name-checking a member of the Defence Forces serving with the UNIFIL mission in Lebanon, who he said he had a phone call with yesterday morning, had a call with a member in the Lebanon who he named. And he didn't say what the nature of the call was, why he was calling, what it was about. But he was certainly using a member in the UNIFIL mission in his campaign video while out running. And that had to be taken down. So that was like 3 in 24 hours.
And this is all quite strange because ultimately this wasn't by accident, by the way. This wasn't just something that Jim Gavin happened to be doing in his private time and then it just became public. Jim Gavin's campaign was making a deal that he was running in this charity run for retired members of the Defence Forces. They were organising doorstep opportunities, press media opportunities at the event. So it was quite clear he wanted to be shown amongst his former colleagues in the Defence Forces. And so then you had this knock-on effect of this sloppiness really on the campaign's part of putting all this out there. And that followed on from, shall we say, the drone incidents. So talk to us about the drone incidents and how did they happen?
So that was another.
That's his other career.
That was his other run. Another run last weekend, a park run that he did with Minister Jack Chambers. And there was drone footage taken off the run. Beautifully slick social media videos that he has been putting out. And the drone footage, it turned out, was shot in a red zone.
Restricted zone for drones, yeah.
So you need special permission from well, the Irish Aviation Authority is the regulator here, to have drones in those areas.
For whom Jim Gavin is the chief operations officer and head of safety.
He is one of the senior most people in the IAA on secondment at the moment while he campaigns. His job is waiting there for him if he doesn't succeed in winning this election. And he's done videos and appeared on RT News in the past talking about the relevance of drone safety and how drones can be great fun, but they can't be used as toys. You have to obey the rules.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, his campaign doesn't obey the rules. And all this is happening while Micheál Martin is in Copenhagen at a conference with EU leaders in which they're discussing the need for, defences against drones within the EU and the protection of airports because of, Russian threats. So he sort of said this was just a mistake, could happen to anyone. The pilot, the person who was steering the drone, appeared to take the hit. They were the ones who should have known this. And then there was another drone footage taken of his campaign launch in what's known as the EXO building, just near where the Point Theatre is in Dublin. And that's not a red zone, but it's a amber zone, so it's restricted. So you have to seek permission for, so there were 2 rule breaches. Now, with the drone incidents, you could say that he wasn't aware of it. He said he didn't see the drone flying in the sky above him.
Except many of his other videos have had drones as well.
Yeah,
so it's quite clear that this wasn't a one-off where the drone...
Yeah, they all have drones.
Yeah.
And, they're shot very beautifully and edited and produced very beautifully. And so he didn't see the drone flying over his head. So, that was a mistake. So you could say that was a mistake. But then when it comes to the issue with using members of the Defence Forces in his campaign videos, he can't blame anyone else for that. He's nowhere else to hide there.
Yeah,
he was in the Defence Forces.
And we not blame the Director of Elections here. Jim Gavin is, as we know, not an experienced politician because this is his first campaign. This is where the Director of Elections is supposed to come in and go, we have a problem with our videos, let's lock them down, let's not do any more. Instead, they don't lock them down, they double down and they have a second set of mistakes. The drones is followed by the Defence Forces issue. Jack Chambers is the Director of Elections. There are other experienced people working within Fianna Fáil. So surely somebody should have said, lads, we need to be abundantly clear we're within all rules and regulations here before we pick this up again. And yet that wasn't happening.
No, and Jack Chambers is his Director of Elections. Jack Chambers is also very busy at the moment coming up with the budget and formulating the budget and dealing with demands from ministers, for the budget. So that's a pretty important task. So Jim Gavin said when he addressed the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party in Cork, a couple of days after they nominated him for their candidate, it was almost like, was described to me as a dressing room talk, like, what he'd give the team as the Dubs manager, a dressing room talk to all the individual TDs, that he wanted them to sort of handle his campaigns in each of their constituencies. So he'd have this great team all over the country. But there does seem to be a sense from TDs that, they don't really know who's orchestrating or managing the campaign. Everything they want or their kind of interaction with the campaign goes through Jack Chambers, Minister for Public Expenditure. And there's a sense, I think, talking to some TDs, that they're not really connected very much to the campaign, that they're not that much involved in it. Now, he has been out, with...
So it's a centralised kind of campaign that is, rather than 43 different campaigns and constituencies around the country.
Which is what he said it was going to be in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there does seem to be, I think, like, the campaign just doesn't seem to be very well executed.
Okay.
For a man who talks about strategy and strategic management, and this is his great...
Working on big projects, so as you told us the other night.
This is a very big project.
Yeah.
To me, I think what it all comes down to is a campaign that is very focused on his image. And him as an individual, the image of him, like it's this sort of, action shots of him running, of him piloting aircraft. And it's a very image-driven campaign. And he is a celebrity candidate, not a political candidate. And then he goes for debates and he's in the television studio in Virgin against his opponents. And he doesn't really have the political skill to take down the positions being advocated by Catherine Connelly, for example, which are the complete opposite to Micheál Martin's worldview. Micheál Martin talks about being pro-EU, pro-Ukraine, standing up for Ukraine against Russia. pro-multilateralism, all these things, pro-trade. Catherine Connelly is making comments in a different direction, and Jim Gavin isn't really deconstructing her arguments because his campaign is so focused on a sort of social media image sort of world, and that's the place that's getting him into trouble.
Catherine Connelly, as you mentioned, she had a good debate. She was the dominant figure in the debate. Her campaign is very much energised by that, and it gave them a bit of a good leg up in the wake of that, largely speaking because the other two candidates were so anonymous. But as the week has gone on, things have gone in a different direction for her. What do you ultimately make and think will be the fallout from this story about her basically seeking to hire a dissident Republican onto her staff a number of years ago, and seeking to get Garda clearance for somebody who had been jailed by the Special Criminal Court?
So Catherine Connelly herself is unapologetic about this. She says she did the right thing. It was a sort of opportunity for rehabilitation for this person. And that's what we've seen with Catherine Connelly. She's very, stuck in her views, unapologetic. She's not the kind of politician you might see Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael sort of apologising or taking down videos or whatever they might be doing. But I think the problem is for the parties supporting her, and particularly now the Labour Party, and their backing of Catherine Connelly. So I think Catherine Connelly, it won't affect her sort of core vote.
Yeah.
But will it affect her support amongst Labour Party voters? Will it affect her support or her transfers from Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael voters? Does it make it harder for her to secure any transfers? But at the same time, you see the Labour Party. Ivana Bacik launched the Labour Party's alternative budget, and she was asked in the room about Catherine Connelly, and she backed her to the hilt. No regrets about backing her campaign. No concerns about her hiring someone who had a conviction for gun possession. No regrets about that. And then Alan Kelly, who was sitting in the room for that press conference, stood outside the Labour Party offices on Ainger Street in Dublin in the rain, on the rainy streets, and did his own little huddle with journalists and said the complete opposite to his party leader. His party leader, who, by the way, was sort of standing just inside the door and who had 5 minutes previously supported Catherine Connelly, and she was waiting to come out the door. And Alan Kelly was there saying this is a serious issue. It's a matter of serious concern, and he would have a lot of concern about it. And he was asked if the Labour Party will come to regret backing Catherine Connelly as president, and he said time will tell.
The third candidate, who you could almost forget about because she's pretty anonymous in that debate, Heather Humphreys, she blamed rustiness for her performance in the debate the other night, where at times she was pretty passive. I mean, being the most experienced politician on the stage representing Fine Gael, as much as Jim Gavin didn't intervene on the EU and world affairs issues, neither did Heather Humphreys. So, I mean, is she going to get into this race at all, or is she just planning on doing what you call in politics a ground war, literally just travelling around the country?
Yeah, well, the ground war is definitely her strength, and she is doing that, and that takes a lot of energy, and it can tire people out for debates too. But Heather Humphreys is not a good debater. She wasn't good in that studio. She seems to have the upper hand in this, in the sense that the two other candidates are now involved in various controversies, and that gives her a bit of a sort of open space to come up as the main candidate. But will she grasp it? That's the question, because she wasn't really grasping it that much during the debate. I think the strategy is to kind of maybe keep the head down, play the ground war, and just sit it out and hope not to get into trouble. That's probably an okay strategy, but I think if she's doing her next debates or her next media interviews, she's going to have to show, that her passion and how she really, really wants this, but also not to get bogged down. She has found herself in a situation of defending the government's record on a whole load of issues like housing. And she was speaking during that debate like a government minister, her government backbencher. She had the government speaking notes, as it were. She was defending their position. I think she has to stand out now more as a sort of presidential candidate rather than someone who's very much attached to and tied to that Fine Gael government.
Tricky though. I mean, she's only gone less than 12 months. I mean, she was there for the decade. So she is going to get, it'll be legitimate to throw anything at her that occurred during her time in cabinet. But your point is she's still defending them on current items.
Yeah,
It's beyond her control, really.
And it's the language that she's using to defend them. It's real kind of government-y language, you know. Yes, there are challenges, but we have to take on these challenges. You know, it's just she needs to sort of make herself now, you know, give herself the stature, the presidential stature, and not the minister defending Simon Harris and everything that goes with their stature.
Yeah. Worth pointing out, we have a Sunday Independent Ireland Thinks opinion poll coming up this weekend. It's a significant poll because it's the first where you have confirmation that these are the only three. Up until now, previous polls we were looking at, will there be a Sinn Féin candidate? Will there be other independents coming into the field? So it is kind of crucial. I know it's early in the campaign, but it's going to be crucial for all three of them, though, to see where they stand at this point.
Yeah, and like, who knows? You know, I mean,
we don't know because we're recording this. Yeah. The poll hasn't even gone out into the field yet, so we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But we know it will be a straightforward ballot paper, though. 1, 2, 3, pick an order of your preference.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see the don't knows, or the people who are not really, you know, into
which were very big in the previous polls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the one to watch for everyone will be Jim Gavin, you know, because he started off the campaign, you know, people said it was his to lose. He has the Dublin, you know, where he should have the sort of Dublin support behind him. He has the GA vote. That's what everyone was saying at the start of the campaign. That's what appealed to Micheál Martin, putting him forward as a candidate. Is Jim Gavin support holding up in any way? Does he have the Dublin support behind him? Because that's absolutely crucial. And the previous poll showed him, you know, not performing very well amongst women. You know, will that also be a feature? And if he doesn't do well, like, how do they regroup and get this campaign going again?
Catherine Connelly, then we're watching her to see what's the story with Sinn Féin weighing in behind her, because previously what we were seeing in the poll was that she got a bit of Sinn Féin support, but not a lot of it. Sinn Féin people wanted a Sinn Féin candidate. So will those people swing in behind her, or do they stay in the don't knows?
Yeah, so does the Sinn Féin support all go to Catherine Connelly? And also, given Catherine Connelly's controversial sort of
or stances. I mean,
alternative stances on
to be fair to her, she's not compromising on things. She is telling people exactly what she thinks.
Yeah, so we know them now. We know what she thinks on all these issues. Is it damaging her, or can people live with that? That's what the poll will tell, you know, at the weekend. And then for Heather Humphreys, you know, is she did her debate performance influence her support, or you know, can she break anywhere beyond the Fine Gael support base to have a broader appeal at this stage?
Yeah, because at some stage presidential elections become two horse races, and you don't want to be the third horse. And then this one, and this early in the campaign, there is, against the backdrop of the presidential election and all its drama, there is also serious regular day-to-day politics playing out. The budget coming up next Tuesday, government probably suited them to have a presidential election, distracting from that. So what's that coming down to in terms of the key flashpoints that we're looking at there?
Yeah, so like someone was saying to me that no one really knows anything about the budget, or even knows it's happening at this stage, but they'll find out for sure on Tuesday, and they'll stand up and take notice, and probably won't be massively impressed because the cost of living supports, we know, are gone. There will be most likely no income tax changes, and there has been over the past couple of budgets, and in the teeth of, you know, the cost of living crisis that is still there for many people, the fact that there'll be no, let's say, extra money in their pockets in that sense, you know, could reflect badly.
Which government played up on dramatically over the last couple of budgets, saying we've adjusted, we've indexed this is resulting in Mary and John having the following amount of money in their bank account, so it's hard to have played it up so much and then turn around and go, oh no, it's all grand, we're just not doing it this year.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd give with one hand and sort of take away with the other after a general election has taken place. And Sinn Féin is making a big play on, the big people feeling the squeeze, the cost of living, and they will try and use that for the presidential purposes to turn this into a sort of referendum on the government, Catherine Connelly versus the government candidates. So Jack Chambers, by all accounts, has been playing pretty hardball with the ministers who are seeking extra money. There seems to be a sort of reluctance to leak or, fly kites this year. I think that's as a result of Jack Chambers himself kind of sending out the message that he doesn't want this negotiated through the airwaves or on the newspapers. And the Social Protection Minister, Derek Leary, it will be, a big test for him. His first, as Minister for Social Protection, his first budget. He has been seeking a €12 increase in social protection payments. And that still is something that hasn't been sorted, as we understand. That's still up in the air.
Yeah, so if it's €12, it's victory for Derek Leary. If it's less than that, he's been pushed back by Jack Chambers and the Mandarins in deeper.
Yeah.
That's one to watch.
And Jack Chambers is all powerful in Fianna Fáil at the moment, by the way. He's almost like the leader in waiting. So, how does Jim Gavin campaign work out for him? How does the budget land for him? It's a big 2 weeks for Jack Chambers.
The other big issue, which is still playing out, by the way, is the Gaza flotilla. And there is Irish interest in it because of the number of Irish people who are on board those boats, including a parliamentarian in Chris Andrews. We saw today that basic government, they kind of parked the leaders' questions. They altered the all schedule in order to have a proper debate and Q&A about this issue. Given the Irish government stance, I mean, is this going to be a negative for the Irish for the government, the way it's playing out, or do you think everybody is in full agreement on it?
Yeah, I think there was kind of movements afoot, before leaders' questions. The whips met and they decided, let's just turn this into statements on the flotilla, so it'll be sort of non-adversarial. So I don't think this is going to particularly land on the government's sort of doorstep in terms of, how this has been handled. But I do think it will propel the issue of Gaza, which is already forefront of the minds of Irish voters, as a very major issue in the presidential campaign, as it already has been, but even more so now. It's an issue, and that seems to be something that Catherine Connelly is doing well on. It seems to be something that is a weak point of Jim Gavin, particularly because of his comments saying, that the military objectives had been met. Those comments, which were far more nuanced at the time, because he did criticise Israel, and he did use the term, genocide, and said it was horrific. But at the same time, the Connelly campaign is really, really pinning that on Jim Gavin and those words. So Gaza is likely to be, I think, a very major issue in this presidential campaign.
Okay, Mary Regan, thank you. Okay, just before we go, to give you a plug, the Indo Politics Live Budget 2026 analysis will be going out on the Irish Independent and the Irish Independent YouTube channel next Tuesday during the budget speeches by Pascal Donoghue and Jack Chambers. So you can join us for that. I'll be here with Kevin Doyle and Katie Byrne to talk about both the politics and the personal finances of Budget 2026.